What's going on? This is Ken Posick with the Content Lab. And today I've got some good friends of mine that I'm going to bring on and talk to about podcasting, content marketing, and travel agency. I think you're really going to have a really good takeaway, at least one or two from our conversations together, whether you're a real estate agent, you're a small business owner, you're in mortgage, title, any of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to bring them on right now. What's going on, Dan and Leslie? How are you guys?
Hey, Ken.
We're good.
Doing well. Thanks for having us on.
I appreciate you being here. So listen, I'm in real estate, and for the longest time, we were told as real estate agents that, hey, like, you know how travel agents, they've kind of disappeared. Real estate agents are next. Everybody's going to get taken away by technology. And yet here you guys are crushing it. And so I would love to start there if we can, just sort of like your journey and what you have to say about that.
Sure. I think travel agencies are still a thing, for sure. And really, honestly, as odd as it sounds, I think COVID and the whole shutdown, everything that happened during that entire process made travel agents even more relevant than we were prior to. So a lot of people, I think, I've personally been a travel agent since 2015, and prior to COVID, it was kind of hard I would get a lot, oh, travel agents are still a thing. I didn't know those still existed. Like, I would get that comment a lot. But since COVID, it's really been, I was burned by this big box company, or I don't ever want to, plan a trip by myself again because it's so confusing now with all of the, regulations and requirements and all of that. So I think that it almost helped us become even more relevant.
Yeah. And obviously there's been a switch from brick and mortar stores, brick and mortar agencies to like home-based travel agencies, which allows us to be way more flexible. We can help our clients from anywhere in the world, literally. And so that is great because we don't have the overhead and we don't have to market vacations. So it doesn't matter whether you book directly with Disney or with us, it's the same price across the board.
That's awesome. And just really the specialization from there. Like I've booked on Expedia. Don't catch me here. I've booked on Expedia in the past before I met you guys. But like you try to get a change or you try to get a hold of somebody, it's always a nightmare. And so like you've added this sort of layer of specialization and also like a touch point where people feel like, hey, I've got somebody on my side, which why wouldn't they want that? I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So let's back up into your journey. How did you get into the travel agency and then also into content marketing? Because you guys have a really big podcast and I'm excited to talk about it.
Sure. So I'll start because I guess I was kind of
You were the agent first? Right?
I was the agent first. So back up a little bit into us. I, by trade, am a nurse and went into nursing instructing. And so I was a college professor, and Dan was project management, Army, kind of did a lot of things in his past. And we took our family to Disney World for the first time in 2012. This guy said it will be the one and only trip.
Said, do it right. We're never going back. This is a big expense.
And so we did it right and got home in I think it was about a month or two. And he was like, so what do you think about a Disney cruise? And so that started the journey. Fast forward a few years, I decided I'm loving planning it so much that why not do it for fun on the side. And so I became a travel agent that specialized in Disney vacations and Universal. Yeah. And then this guy steps in.
So early 2017, I suggested, why don't we create a podcast? I mean, we talk about Disney a lot anyway. We had started just like a fledgling YouTube channel. It was just basically us on our vacations in 2015 because my parents live 9 hours away in Houston, Texas. Oh, wow. And we were sharing that with them and we were talking about planning vacations and everything. And really, we just wanted a place to talk about that. And maybe, Leslie could get a few more clients out of the deal. And so we started it, and I actually started it to prep for a different podcast I was doing, which, by the way, that one failed miserably. The Disney podcast is what stuck because we're passionate about it.
Yeah. Sure. I told him time and time again, no one's going to want to listen to us, but
Shocking. And here we are. So 5 years later. And so let's bring it maybe just today so that before we get into the nitty gritty. So did it work?
Yeah,
it worked really, really well. I am always amazed at how many people want to just connect with us and hear us in their heads twice a week for maybe 45 minutes each time. It is wild. But yeah, we started off whenever we first launched, we had maybe 12 listeners a week. And that has grown considerably over the years. So 5.5 years in, we're at about 60,000 downloads a month. And so we love it. We love doing it.
So cool. So why podcasting? Why do you think that worked so well when you have so many other content mediums? Why did you choose that one, and why have you stuck with it so long?
So don't get me wrong, I love video. I love editing video. Our YouTube channel is growing, and I like spending time there and creating that content as well. But it is so different doing podcasting in particular because you really connect with your audience. So whereas somebody might turn on a video and they might pay attention to it for 1 minute, 2 minutes. I mean, if you're lucky, 5 minutes is kind of the gold standard on a 12-minute, 15-minute video. And then they either get bored with it, they click off, they think about something else, they get distracted, they go do something else. Whereas podcasting, you're using that as the distraction, right? So you're driving by yourself. You're like, I listen to podcasts when I run and I'm out there and I don't want to just watch the road go under my feet. And so I connect with people that way that they have no idea that connection exists. So like I have podcasts that I love listening to, and instead of, flipping off a channel in 1 minute or 2 minutes, I'm listening to them for 45 minutes, the entire length of the podcast. Because one, I have nothing better to do, but two, like they're in my head and I form that connection with them. And after that connection forms, it becomes this thing where I want to continue listening week in and week out for every episode to hear not only what they have to say, but also get the updates and insights into their lives.
Yeah. And what's really cool is when they in turn reach out to us, the listeners, they create that bond. And then we've had friends all over the world now that we've never met because they've listened to us twice a week. So it's really cool.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I love that. So, okay, somebody was starting over fresh and they were like, hey, I want to get started on a podcast. Let's get nitty gritty. Like, what does someone need to know about podcasting in 2022?
Consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So podcasting is slow, right?
Yes.
And so many people, they hear, oh, you've got a podcast, that's cute. But the YouTube channels over here, the TikTokers over here that have millions and millions of views. But the quality of the audience in podcast makes it so rich of an environment to get into. Literally, you need an iPhone or just some sort of smartphone to record. And then like you can create an account on Anchor and you can be podcasting instantaneously. But because the barrier to entry is so low, there's so many podcasts and most of them don't make it past the first month, let alone the first year. So consistency, dedication to the product. And then I would say having something that people like listening to. And what we term that at is just overall value. So we bring value to our audience in the terms of quality. Like we've invested in some nicer equipment that helps us to get that nicer audio quality. So it's pleasing to the ear. And then we also invest time into creating something that's not only entertaining, but can also bring them value in the form of saving time or money when they go to one of these destinations.
Got it. So I've heard Anchor, get started, consistency. Is there do you edit them yourself?
Yeah. So it's funny. The
little type A people.
Yeah. Right. So the videos are very curated, right? So the videos, like I spend hours a week editing our videos. We put 2 videos out a week on our YouTube channel, Worth Melting For. The podcast, we like to keep it a little more real, honest, and genuine. And we hope that transparency comes through. And so we don't plan out a podcast until either the day before or that day, because we want it to be fresh. We want it to be something that's relevant and time sensitive, like in the now.
It's something we're excited about talking about that day.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we edit it as we're recording the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So once you're done, it's ready to kind of upload as soon as whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So if we mess up, I mean, we might like stop and then kind of clip it together there, but we rarely have to do that. We just kind of talk.
Yeah.
It's weird how it comes through. Like we could have a scripted video and then the way that we put it together, it just kind of makes sense and flows by clipping those ends together. But a podcast, you can tell all those little cuts in there and it's displeasing, right? It's not very fun to listen to, all those little edits and jumps and everything. Whereas video, it kind of is cool because you can create transitions in those
jump cut.
Yeah. It's not the same with audio. And so to have mistakes and to leave them in your finished product is more authentic. And it actually comes across that way. I appreciate podcasts that do that as well.
Yeah, I love that. And what about some like intro outros? Like if someone wanted to get started, should they go to like Fiverr to figure that out? Did you figure that out just yourself on the intro? Or like where does somebody start with something like that?
I listened to a lot of little clips of music. I mean, I think I spent like 2 solid weeks just going through like listening to clips of music and things that, what kind of emotion did we want to portray in the intro and outro, and finally found the one that we really liked. And so that's what we stuck with.
So we got our logo off Fiverr. We've used the same guy that created our logo to do several different like caricature logos and different things for that. He also created the logo for Fantastical Vacations, which is our travel agency. And it's like really inexpensive, and they have some really creative people on Fiverr. So we love Fiverr. Yeah. We found the intro outro music on Envato. I don't even think that was the name of it then, but it's called Envato now. And you can get some great stuff, great jingly stuff. I would caution anybody that's creating a podcast to not create a really long intro. It's just like, if I hear that, I'm automatically skipping past it, and then I'm into missing some of what they're actually talking about.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit. So the cool thing about being a content creator and also a business owner, and for you guys as podcasters, but then you also have a great YouTube, and we'll make sure we plug all of the places people can find you here in a bit. But like, your business is the content as well. Whereas like, some of the massive, I'm just going to say like Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, like when everybody would know, like they also have to take a break to do a sponsorship. Right. But you guys are the business. Like for me on my main YouTube channel, like I am the business. So like, I don't have to stop and pause in that. So how do you find that balance of like providing content that people are going to want to listen to, but then also like, hey, we're travel agents and we can specialize in this, right? How do you find that balance?
I guess kind of awkwardly. I don't know.
So I will say the first thing I do when I know that a podcast like comes in with a 30-second commercial, like I start the podcast and I hit skip 30 seconds.
Yeah. Sure.
If I hear a podcaster say, let's break for a word from our sponsors, fast forward. Like that's all I'm doing, right? Until I hear the actual podcast come on and I hit rewind a couple of times.
Sure.
And
so we just give ourselves really awkward plugs whenever it feels like it flows.
We just integrate it. And honestly, I mean, I'm sorry for any of our podcasters or listeners. We don't give them a chance to skip past it, right? Because it's never in the same place in any podcast. We always find a way to drop it, and it may just be like a 2-second, like, don't forget to check us out here, or it may be like a 15-second plug that they don't know is coming, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we do it. But you're right, because we don't want sponsorships from outside. It's just us that we are pushing. And so like, if you are enjoying hanging out with us in your ears for 45 minutes, then you probably won't mind a 10-second plug and then moving on to the good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's the whole, like, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk's like jab, 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 right hook, where he's just like, I'm going to give you value. Yeah. And oh, by the way, if I've given you all of this value, you won't mind if I ask for a little bit of business. Oh, and then let's get back into the value, right? I think that's the way content marketing should be done. And yet so many business owners miss it.
I love Gary V specifically because he makes everything seem so easy, and it's just like, well, duh, why wasn't I thinking about that? Like everybody comes to him with these massive problems, and they're really not. It all boils down to the same simple steps over and over. And if you can bring people value, it goes a long way.
Yeah, agreed. So let's talk about this. So scalability in podcasting and content creation. First off, you create this podcast, and how do you disseminate it, right? Obviously, you put it on Anchor or Lip Sync or something like that. It goes out to Apple Music. But from there, how do you get people to know about it?
That's a good question. Because the barrier to entry is it's zero, basically. Like everybody has a smartphone. You can just create a podcast instantaneously out of thin air. There are so many out there. And because there's so many, you tend to get lost if you are new, because you can't differentiate yourself with the podcast to your left and right that's also new, that may not be around in a month or 2 months or 3 months. So that's very, very tough. And figuring that out, like if we had the secret sauce, we would love to share it. But for us, it was just long-term growth and reaching out to our audience on social media more than anything. So like, we're big on Instagram and Facebook. That's how we kind of keep in touch with our audience, and we let them know when episodes drop. We let them know what it's about, and then just creating that value in each episode. And word of mouth has worked really well for us.
Yeah, and I think another thing that has helped is some cross promotion. So doing like some podcasts with other people, or like we've had you on our podcast before. So then like your audience was introduced to us a little bit. And then asking for reviews. And so that really helped. We started doing that where we would read a review on air and then ask for reviews, and people like to hear their reviews read. And so more people would review. And in that podcast world, if you get those reviews, then iTunes knows people like you. And so they put you higher up.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's so good. So I've got so many other questions I want to dig in with you guys. Hopefully you're okay. So
Sure.
so let's go back to the travel agency side. So you guys have this podcast, you're creating great content, you're staying super consistent. Then the podcast starts growing, and then eventually Dan's like, "Hey, I'm gonna come on. Leslie's got it rolling. I'm gonna jump in." So how do you guys disseminate between the two, like travel agency, content creation, and how do you make that all work?
Yeah, so I'm primarily the travel agent. I mean, I'm the one that's kind of like the people person. I'm the one that deals with most of the quotes, although Dan he's started stepping up a little bit in that area because I've needed his help over the last couple of months, and so he's been doing some quotes as well. But really, like that side of things and managing the vacation is a lot of my side, and so I'm managing other people's trips, whereas Dan primarily does the content.
Yeah, I love content creation. I think it's super fun. I think it's a great way to connect with people and just share our story and our passion for the product. And so, going back to what you said with marketing and selling vacations, like we don't think of it as selling vacations. Honestly, Disney does a great job at selling Disney, and Universal does a great job at selling Universal. They don't need our help. So what we do with the podcast or with the YouTube channel is we want to sell ourselves, and we want to let our audience know that we are the experts, and that if you trust us with planning your next magical vacation, you will have an amazing time. And why not anyway? Because you're not spending any extra money doing so, right? You're going to pay the same regardless of if you book with us or Disney. So I'm on that content creation side, trying to make everything we do seem genuine and honest, because that's who we are. Like who we are on the podcast is who we are here. It's who we are in real life. Because honestly, I mean, we quit our jobs to move to Orlando and focus on this stuff, and it would really, really stink if we didn't enjoy what we did. So that has to show through as well.
I heard you guys had a really good agent too.
Man, I don't know.
He's a little dicey. I don't know. You never know. So let's look a little bit more about, like, go deeper on the content side of like the consistency and like that, what that looks like, Dan. So I know both of you are the face of the company, and yet like putting out a podcast or 2 podcasts a week plus a YouTube video plus Instagram, it can be daunting for anybody. But then to do it to the level that you guys have, it's hard to stay long-term consistent. So talk to us a little bit about your schedule and how you go about staying consistent when it's so easy to fall off.
So we do 2 podcasts a week and 2 videos a week on YouTube. Those are kind of the big content creation publications that we do every week. We do Sunday nights and Wednesday nights on the podcast. And again, we're recording same day. We're recording day of because we want to be relevant, and we want any news that has come out in like since the last podcast, we want to be able to report on that as well. So usually I am either the day before or the morning of. That's part of what I'm doing. I'm creating an outline. We don't script anything, but we do create outlines of just like talking points. And then we just have a conversation just like this. And that allows us to be a little more fluid and a little more agile of what we're talking about.
Yep.
Now, the videos, we started with creating just 1 video a week of our vacations. So we did that family vlog thing on Sundays. And we would take gaps, like we'd do a Disney vacation and we would do like 8 or 9 videos of a 10-day trip. And then we would take a gap for months until we went back to another Disney vacation. So we've turned that into more of vlog, like this is our recording studio. We'll talk about our experience moving to Orlando, things like that. And then on Thursdays, we release a dining review, which honestly we want to do anyway because we just wanted a date night.
It's a built-in date night every day.
It's a date night that's also a write-off. It's amazing.
It was a way to make a business expense that we can use for marketing, advertising, and it helps our audience because they want to see. They don't want to just like read about, okay, here's a couple pictures about what Topolino's Terrace is like. They want to actually see the environment and know what the experience is like. And we rate those things and we put them on a dining review every Thursday. And so I don't know. It's been really, really fun.
It has. And it's forced us to kind of step outside of our box and go to places that maybe we've tried before and we didn't like back then. And we've changed our opinions or haven't.
T-Rex Cafe, not looking at you.
T-Rex, not the greatest, not at all. Yeah.
Not a fan. But we are trying things that we probably wouldn't have tried otherwise because we have our spots that we really love and we would keep going back to.
Yeah. And then it comes full circle because then when our clients ask us, have you ever tried this before? Well, yes, we have. Here's the video link. Why don't you go see for yourself if it's something that you might like?
Yeah, it's not. Whereas I remember my wife and I, we booked a travel. We booked our honeymoon through a travel agency, and we were asking questions, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know. It's got a Gulf view," and I was like, "You're just looking on the website. Like I can look on the website.
I see that picture right here."
Yeah. It's so crazy. Here's a good opportunity for a plug. So Courtney asked, did I miss the name of their podcast? I'm already subscribed to their YouTube channel. So go ahead and plug your podcast so people can subscribe.
Yeah, so it's Addicted to the Mouse. So it's twice a week on Sundays and Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about scalability from here. So people start reaching out, right? You're being super consistent on the content side, podcasting, YouTube, all that good stuff. And then all of a sudden you get to a place where, you can't physically handle as many people reaching out, I'm sure. Like same thing on real estate. Like we have so many folks that inquire. I would love to help everybody, but I had to grow it. I had to grow a team, and I know you guys are at that place too. So how many agents work for your agency at this point?
So we are at 65 agents. So Dan and I launched the agency in September of 2020, which seems like a really odd time to launch a travel agency. But it worked out really well. I think it actually was probably one of the most perfect times to launch because everybody was missing travel. And so whenever it came back, they were excited to travel. And so we've had some really great growth opportunities with that.
That's so cool.
I would say most of our agents came from being our podcast listeners. They, had a relationship with us through that already. And we're so excited whenever we launched the travel agency that they reached out and they wanted to be a part of this. And so it's been a really neat, just group of people because of that relationship that we had kind of already built with them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. So let me ask you that with the growth that you've experienced, 65 people is a lot to build a culture around and to make sure that, hey, people that listen to Addicted to the Mouse and follow Worth Melting For on YouTube, they get to know you guys. So how have you built that around the culture of growing this company when it's content based and so many people are used to you and they might want to directly work with you, and I'm sure they still can, but like, how do you create that culture to where everybody's kind of on the same page?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up culture, because it's literally the most important thing to us when we first started talking about creating a team and moving forward, like building and growing that team is obviously everyone has to be knowledgeable about the product. But almost as important is the culture. So we don't want an environment where anyone's competitive with each other. If you've ever been a part of a Disney Facebook group, sometimes those can get pretty toxic.
Sometimes,
So that is the opposite of what we're trying to create there. We want all of our agents to be supportive of each other. We encourage like a competitive spirit, but at the same time, like everyone celebrates each other's successes. And so if somebody has a first sale or they hit 6 figures in sales or whatever it is, they can get a hold of the group and, just shout it from the rooftops, and everybody's like, yes, good job. And it's just such an amazing place. I think the fact that it is kind of grown out of content that is centered around us and we let our personality shine through that content, I think that only serves to amplify the culture, from where we started it, because everybody has spent time with us. In fact, if somebody reaches out and they want to join the team and we talk to them and they've never heard of the podcast, it's happened a few times. We actually ask them, like, go listen to 10 or 15 podcasts, because that's who you're going to be working with. Like, that's who we are. Like, make sure that we have the right personality. If you get along with us, or if you think you will because of our personalities, you're probably going to get along with the rest of the team, because that's the kind of Disney nerddom that we've built. Honestly, like that's
my people.
That's who gets together, and that's like we have Zoom calls where we'll just hang out and talk about like the latest Disney news and just catch up with each other's lives, just for no other reason other than to build that team.
It was funny. We get together at least once a year. At a location. And so our very first one was at Walt Disney World. And our youngest, as everybody is like, leaving from the trip, said, "Mom, it's like all of them are you."
That's got to feel amazing, actually. Like, hey, we've got our DNA in the we're hiring our people. Yeah, that's so cool. Who's somebody that you guys look up to in the content space, the travel space?
I look up to any creator that can reach an audience and bring value to them in something that they're passionate about. And that's across several different industries. So I first started listening to podcasts, and like Leslie said, I'm kind of the numbers nerd. You know, I have a master's in finance, and like that's kind of my background. And so I listen to a lot of financial podcasts. And so like one creator is Pete Adeney. Have you heard of Mr. Money Mustache?
I haven't.
So he started a blog. He was a Canadian, or is a Canadian, but he lives in Colorado now. But he was some sort of engineer that was really working hard to go down the path of financial independence, retire early, if you've heard of that community. Yeah, he started a blog about it, and it blew up. And so not only did it not derail his track of this financial independence, retire early, he's all about sustainability and like treating, you know, like the earth, like it's a resource that will deteriorate over the years. But it allowed him to build a presence online. And then he kind of pivoted into some more revenue streams around the FIRE movement. So I get behind those kinds of things where somebody that is, you know, not known for anything, takes a passion, they bring value to people, and then they find a way to monetize that.
Yeah. It's funny because really without him listening to that podcast years ago, we probably wouldn't be where we are now, because that is really kind of what led us down our path of financial independence and made it where we were comfortable enough to quit both of our jobs and move here and start a agency and, you know, make crazy
make all those crazy life choices that turned out fantastic. So it's so good. So with that, what does the future look like?
Exciting. I mean, we have pivoted our lives to where, I mean, it's really in this place where we are in control of our time and our location, and we can focus more on what we love, which is spending time with our boys and traveling. And it's exciting to see the growth and be able to be, you know, 41 years old and doing exactly what we want to be doing. So
yeah, you mentioned scalability, which I think is always important. Like we talk to our agents a lot about growth, and it doesn't always have to be growth as far as like sales numbers or number of trips booked or anything like that. It can be growth in like personal goals. So whether it's reading more or just developing yourself, or maybe your knowledge more, it can be growth in your side business or in your full-time careers, or however that looks for each individual person. Personally, we think obviously scalability as far as content creation is kind of built into the ecosystems that we use, the platforms that our videos and podcasts are on. So it doesn't matter, you know, if you post one podcast and one person listens to it or 1 million people listen to it, the same amount of effort is going into that podcast. However, I think but adding a different platform is definitely in the cards for us. We are talking about creating a Patreon account where we can kind of bridge the gap between like the show, which is curated content, to our personal lives, which would be more like behind the scenes. So like picture me setting up a camera behind this camera, and you see like the boom mic and the key light and the camera and the screen and the computer. You see all this stuff, and maybe we have a conversation like a few minutes before a podcast and 10 minutes after a podcast, and interact more, so that that personal relationship with our audience, which we don't get now.
Community based.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can definitely, that's something that's missing, honestly, because we have a community, but it's all one-way communication unless they're leaving a review or maybe they reach out on an Instagram, but there's no like place, like a private Facebook group or something like that, where we can all interact and learn about each other.
Yeah, I love this. I love it. Dan and Leslie Lowry, Addicted to the Mouse podcast and Worth Melting For on YouTube. Make sure you check them out. Follow them on Instagram too. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Very cool. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.